Welcome to this presentation on basic operations. Today, we're going to demonstrate step-by-step instructions on how to perform basic operation on the quarter-ton Emerson refrigeration trainer. While conducting basic operation procedures, you must wear safety goggles and gloves at all times. In addition, make sure to remove all jewelry. Today, we're going to show you how to properly install bar gauges to the unit. The instructor will demonstrate how to perform a system-dependent passive recovery with the assistance of the compressor, how to perform a vacuum on the system by using a vacuum pump, how to properly charge the system by performing a high-side liquid charge or performing a low-side vapor charge, how to perform a mechanical or electrical pump down. Lastly, how to perform a self-contained active recovery using the Recovery-Only Pro Max machine. You will also learn how to perform a compressor efficiency test and how to properly remove the bar gauges from the system. Step 1. Ensure the unit is off. Step 2. Remove all stem caps from the SSV, DSV, and King valve. Step 3. Ensure that all valves are in the back-seated position. Step 4. Remove the service port cap from the SSV and DSV. Step 5. Connect the compound gauge blue hose to the SSV gauge port and connect the high pressure gauge red hose to the DSV gauge port. Step 6. Put the unit in normal operation with the bar gauge installed by placing the SSV and DSV in the crack off the back seat position. Step 7. Turn the unit on and observe suction and discharge pressure. Ensure the unit is off. Place the recovery cylinder in an empty bucket and add ice to the bucket. Step 3. Connect the service hose yellow to the recovery cylinder vapor port and open the cylinder valve. Step 4. Ensure the compound gauge is closed and open the high pressure gauge valve on the bar gauge manifold. Step 5. Turn the unit on and front seat the DSV. Step 6. Monitor the compound gauge pressure until it reaches 10 inches of mercury. Then turn the unit off. Step 7. Wait 2 minutes to ensure that the compound gauge pressure stays below 0. Step 8. Close the high pressure gauge valve on the bar gauge manifold. Step 9. Return the unit to normal operation. Step 10. Close the recovery cylinder valve and remove the service hose. Step 11. Remove the recovery cylinder from the ice bucket. Step 1. Ensure unit is off. Step 2. Connect the yellow service hose to the vacuum pump inlet port. Step 3. Place the SSV and DSV in the mid position. Step 4. Open the compound gauge and high pressure gauge valve on the bar gauge manifold. Step 5. Turn the vacuum pump selector lever to the open position. Step 6. Press start on the vacuum pump. Step 7. Stop the vacuum pump when 30 inches of mercury vacuum has been achieved. Step 8. Close the compound gauge and high pressure gauge valve on the bar gauge manifold. Step 9. Turn the vacuum pump selector lever to the closed position. Step 10. Disconnect the service hose. Step 11. Return the unit to normal operation with the bar gauge installed. Step 1. Ensure the unit is off. Step 2. Place the recovery cylinder in warm water for 1 to 2 minutes. Step 3. Connect the yellow service hose to the liquid line gauge port on the recovery cylinder and open the cylinder valve. Step 4. Weigh the recovery cylinder on a digital scale. Step 5. Leave the recovery cylinder on the scale and press the 0 button on the digital scale to re-zero the scale. Step 6. Mid-position the discharge service valve. Step 7. Open the high pressure gauge valve on the bar gauge manifold and allow 2 pounds of liquid refrigerant to enter the unit on the high side of the system.
Okay.
Step 9. Close the recovery cylinder liquid valve and remove the service hose from the recovery cylinder. Step 10. Return the unit to normal operation. Step 11, start the unit and observe system pressures. Step 1, ensure unit is off. Step 2, backseat the discharge service valve and remove the high pressure gauge hose from the gauge port. Step 3, remove the gauge port cap on the king valve and place it on the discharge service valve gauge port. Step 4, connect the high pressure gauge hose to the king valve gauge port on the receiver. Step 5, front seat the king valve. Step 6, ensure that the compound gauge and the high pressure gauge valve and the bar gauge manifold are closed. Step 7, start the unit and observe the system pressures. Step 8, stop the unit when the compound gauge reads 10 inches of vacuum. Step 9, backseat the king valve and remove the high pressure gauge hose. Step 10, remove the gauge port cap from the discharge service valve and place it on the king valve gauge port. Step 11, connect the high pressure gauge hose to the discharge service valve gauge port and return the unit to normal operation. Step 1, ensure the unit is off. Step 2, front seat the suction service valve. Step 3, backseat the discharge service valve. Step 4, backseat the king valve. Step 5, start the unit and observe system pressure. The unit must be fully charged. Step 6, observe the compound gauge. The compressor should pull a vacuum of 22 inches of mercury within 2 minutes. Step 7, stop the unit when this vacuum is achieved or after 2 minutes. Step 8, return the suction service valve to the normal operation. Step 1. Ensure the unit is off. Step 2. Connect the service hose yellow from the bar gauge manifold to the inlet port connection of the recovery machine. Step 3. Place the suction service valve and discharge service valve in the mid position. Step 4. Connect the outlet hose on the recovery machine to the liquid line port of the recovery cylinder. Step 5. Open the recovery cylinder liquid valve. Step 6. Open the high pressure gauge valve first and then open the compound gauge valve on the bar gauge manifold. Step 7. Place the inlet valve knob and outlet valve knob on the recovery machine to the open position. Step 8. Ensure that the recovery machine selector knob is on recovery mode and press start. Step 9. Monitor the compound gauge pressure on the bar gauge manifold and turn the recovery machine off once 10 inches of mercury vacuum is achieved. Step 10. Observe system pressure. If the pressure rises above 0 psig on the bar gauge manifold, repeat step 8 through 10. Step 11. After the vacuum is stable, close the compound gauge and high pressure gauge valve on the bar gauge manifold. Step 12. Purge remaining refrigerant from the recovery machine. First, turn the input port selector knob on the recovery machine to the closed position. Second, turn the recovery and purge knob to the purge position. Third, start the recovery machine and allow it to run until 10 inches of mercury vacuum is achieved, then turn the unit off. Fourth, place the inlet and outlet port knob on the recovery machine to the closed position. 5. Close the liquid valve on the recovery cylinder. 6. Return the recovery and purge knob on the recovery machine to the recover position. 7. Disconnect the yellow service hose from the inlet port of the recovery machine. 8. Disconnect the red hose from the outlet of the recovery machine from the recovery cylinder. And last, return the unit to normal operation. Step 1, ensure the unit is off. Step 2, determine normal suction and discharge pressure for the unit. Step 3, put the suction service valve in the mid position. Step 4, connect the yellow service hose on the bar gauge manifold to the vapor gauge port on the recovery cylinder. Step 5, open the recovery cylinder vapor valve. Step 6, start the unit and open the compound gauge on the bar gauge manifold to allow vapor refrigerant to enter the system on the low side. Step 7, observe the sight glass and periodically open and close the compound gauge valve on the bar gauge manifold. Step 8, perform this until both the low and high side pressure calculated in Step 2 are achieved. Step 9, once the charge is completed, close the compound gauge valve on the bar gauge manifold. Step 10, close the vapor valve on the recovery cylinder. Step 11, return the suction service valve to normal operation and observe system pressure. Step 1, ensure unit is in normal operation with bar gauge manifold installed for pressure reading and that the unit is charged with refrigerant. Step 2, adjust the low pressure cutout to stop the unit at 10 inches of mercury vacuum. Step 3, start the unit, turn the thermostat clockwise, use a screwdriver until you hear the liquid line solenoid valve close. Step 4, run the unit until the suction pressure reaches 0 psig on the bar gauge manifold. Step 5, observe suction pressure. If it rises above 0 psig, repeat Step 4 until pressure remains below 0 psig. Step 6, turn the unit on. Return system to normal operation by turning the thermostat counterclockwise until you hear the liquid line solenoid valve energized. Step 7, Run the unit for 3 minutes and then stop the unit. Step 1. Ensure unit is off. Step 2. Place the suction service valve in the crack off the back seat position. Step 3. Back seat the discharge service valve. Step 4. Start the unit. Step 5. Open the high pressure gauge valve on the bar gauge manifold. Step 6. Slowly open the compound gauge valve on the bar gauge manifold until both pressures are equalized. Step 7. Stop the unit. Step 8. Close both compound gauge valve and high pressure gauge valve on bar gauge manifold. Step 9. Backseat the suction service valve to remove all hoses from the unit. Step 10. Place all caps back on the service port and valve stem.